We got a matchup between two teams that are pretty familiar with each other. We got Hope College versus Mount St. Joseph. This is a matchup that we did not see last year, but we saw the 2 years prior where both teams end up going 1-1 against each other. And this is a really interesting matchup because in both of those games, pretty competitive games. And you have Hope this year 2-0 right now going into this game. You also have Mount St. Joseph 1-1 coming off of a loss to Aurora, a close loss in a game against a team that has received votes. Now they are not ranked according to D3 football. Hope is. They're a top 15 team in the country right now, coming off of a dominant win in their last game where defensively, if you look at just stopping the run, they only gave up one net yard in the whole game. Like, that is just absolute domination when it comes to stopping the run. Now, if you look at this Mount St. Joseph team, it's going to be a little bit of a different approach because this Mount St. Joseph team overall, especially their offense, if you look at how they have performed this year, they're a very pass-heavy offense. Like, if you look at just the first two games, running the ball, they've averaged about 20 yards on the ground. Now, if you look at throwing, this is a complete opposite of that story. They're averaging almost 340 yards of offense through the air. This is a very air-heavy offense. Now, this isn't one that is like Mount St. Joseph hasn't been trying to run the ball. They've tried 32 times and 29 times. They just haven't been super successful, and I don't know if that's going to continue in this game for Mount St. Joseph. I think Hope's going to continue to stop the run. So it's really going to be a battle between what Mount St. Joseph can do through the air with their quarterback in Jackson Schreiber and his wide receivers Eli Ashton and Michael Hunkus versus what Hope can do defensively in the secondary. And if you look at the secondary overall for Hope, obviously the strength of the defense is going to be stopping the run. But if you look at the secondary for Hope, it's still been pretty good for the most part this year. They really haven't thrown for a ton of yards. Now against Franklin, they did throw for 309, but again, that was a game that wasn't even relatively close. And you also have been having a Mount St. Joseph team that, like I said, averaging 340 yards per game. And even though they lost a close Aurora game, you can still maybe give up about that and still kind of have a chance or maybe could win that game. Now, offensively, it's obviously going to be dependent on what Hope does. And it's really going to start out with what this Mount St. Joseph team does defensively. Because if you look at the two strengths of this defense, number one and the biggest strength is stopping the run. They've been only giving up about 111 yards on the ground per game. Now, if you look at Hope offensively, they're a pretty heavy run team. Now, that doesn't mean they can't throw the ball because they've been great throwing the ball with Alex Thole. But this is a team that is going to want to run the ball quite a bit. And Hope offensively has ran for 270 yards and 179 yards in each of those two games. Scored 11 touchdowns running the ball. Passing, though, it's still about 350 yards of offense. Now, again, do I think Mount St. Joseph is a much better opponent than Loras or Franklin? Yeah, absolutely. I think you saw that in the Aurora game. But this offense, for what Hope has going for it, is just so difficult to stop for the most part. Because if you stop the run game and A.J. Martell, Trey Goki, Mike Murphy, Cal Matter, if you stop those guys, which is going to be difficult to do with this offensive line, this experienced offensive line that Hope has and has been dominating through the run game throughout this year, then you really have to think about Alex Thole. Alex has been great this year for Hope. He has 3 touchdowns so far, hasn't had to throw for a ton of yardage, 626 yards on the year, but you have wide receivers on this team and Johnny Rohan Blayton, Travis Myers, Kyle Matter, Trevor Griffiths. You also have tight end Jack Goldie. Like, you have weapons on this team that Alex can throw it too. So it's going to be a pretty difficult matchup for Mount St. Joseph. Now, do I think it's going to be as close as the games we saw prior in the last 2 years before last year? I truly don't. And that's my prediction in this game. I think Hope's going to win. And I think this Hope team is just getting its stride going. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns for a lot of these teams that are going to be facing Hope is when this team can get going offensively. It's really difficult to win against this team just because of how they've done it stopping the run. If you can stop the run, if you can get pressure on the other team, that's going to make it so much more difficult in the pass game when you're so far behind. Now, if you look at just overall like how Hope has been doing defensively in this game, you have to focus on just their total sacks on the year. You also have to focus on tackle for losses. Like this team has had 5 sacks on the year for 44 yards, 21 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. Now, you would like to see those turnovers go up a little bit more, but you're only 2 games in the year and you forced 1 fumble and 2 interceptions on the year. And I don't really think you can complain too much about that. So I truly think that this Hope team is going to win this game. I think you have a good enough offense to do it. I think this defense will continue to travel wherever they go. I think this offense is going to continue to put up points. You've seen what this team has done. They've been averaging 50 points a game when also only giving up 7 on average. Now, do I think that's going to necessarily continue? I don't necessarily know, but they were right around, I think, 11 or 12 points last year. Like, this is a defense that is scary, and if this offense continues to play the way it has, which has a total of 1,167 yards on the season, averaging 583.5 yards a game, this is going to be a long day for Mount St. Joseph. But hey, any game is possible. Any result can happen. I think Coach Sturzma will have this team prepared. He always does. I think this offense will get the run game going behind this offensive line. I think you're going to be able to continue to find the tight ends and the wide receivers on this roster as well. I think the defense is just going to continue to fly around and get stabs, force turnovers, get in the backfield, cause issues for the other team. And if they can truly continue this dominant run-stopping defense, that really turns up the pressure on the opposite team, because when it becomes that visible that they're going to throw the ball, which I truly think if you look at the history of what this team has done for Mount St. Joseph so far, I think it's going to be a team that if they continue to not run the ball effectively, they're going to kind of go more towards that air attack, which they've been successful at, but not enough to put up points to win, at least against Aurora. Did win the first game, lost a close game against that team. So it's a good team. It is a solid Mount St. Joseph team. I think this is a real opportunity for Hope to continue the momentum that they have. You can't go into this expecting to win. I think this is, like I said, a solid Mount St. Joseph team. You just have to handle business, and I think Hope does in this game. So, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this preview. Obviously, I'll give a recap to this game, talk a little bit about what happened. But, yeah, I think Hope ends up winning this game and going 3-0 in non-con, and then they got MIAA starting right up after that. But, yeah, no, if you like this preview, if you liked just what you saw, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment, let your friends, family know. More Hope College, other college content coming up. But, yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this preview, and I'll recap this game after Saturday.